Out here in the dense Pennsylvania woodlands, especially through the echoing hollows of the Alleghenies and the silent ridges of Central County, the forest has a name. It calls itself the Minnehaha or the Tionesta or Spring Creek Canyon, but the locals, they just call it Squatch County. Pennsylvania is no stranger to Sasquatch lore. Far from the misty Pacific Northwest, the Keystone State harbors a wild, whispering tradition of Bigfoot, or a sense of old hunters would say, the Wildman of the Susquehanna Ridge. Early reports from the 1800s spoke of hairy, enormous wildmen in the forest of northern Pennsylvania, dating back to the settlers who claimed something lumbered beyond their campsites. As Bigfoot research became popular in the 20th century, Pennsylvania racked up dozens of sightings. According to one survey, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, BFRO, has recorded over 130 and possibly more Bigfoot reports in Pennsylvania, including recent ones in March of 2025. The hotspots include Central County, remember Spring Creek Canyon, the Allegheny National Forest, Fayette County, and stretches of the Appalachian wilds. Why Pennsylvania? Because the terrain is perfect. Thick forests, deep hollows, creek valleys, and wilderness that can swallow even the sound of footsteps. Trails like Spring Creek Canyon, Tionesta Creek, and the Buffalo Creek backwoods give just enough hush and shadow for something large, silent, and unseen to roam. And I can testify to this because I grew up in Pennsylvania and the woods are very dense. Now, let's zoom in on the March of 2025 Pennsylvania Bigfoot flurry, where things got weird, loud, and personal. The knock on the Spring Creek Canyon on March 6, 2025, an experienced hiker, Todd McPherson, reported a startling series of wood knocks while hiking the Spring Creek Canyon Trail, just northeast of the Penn State University Fish Hatchery. He described it like this. At roughly 9 a.m., just past the fish hatchery, he heard a sharp knock, like an axe handle hitting wood. He paused, scanned the woods uphill for him for about 30 seconds. Nothing. He took a couple more steps, then another knock, exactly the same. He froze and looked uphill. After about 2 minutes, he heard something large moving through the brush and woods, running uphill away from him, but he never saw anything. The unusual part, Todd later noted that another Bigfoot report from February 2025, very close in location, almost overlapping his trail area, which suggests this spot is an ongoing activity. Another BFRO report from February 2025, hunting area 3.5 miles northeast of Penn State, mentioned a good visual sighting, Class A, in roughly the same terrain. In Fayette County, not far from the Allegheny Ridges, another reported Bigfoot sighting stirred conversion. A figure walking along the trail, disappearing into the trees, once spotted by a passing cyclist. A National Weather Service storm damage survey photographer even captured what appeared to be a shape of a large, upright figure in the woods, though officials later cautioned it might be a staged silhouette or prank. These overlapping reports, knocks, visuals, strange movements, combine to give you Central County and Fayette County a renewed reputation as Pennsylvania's Squatch territory. Now, let's build a few dramatized witness stories based on real reports, interviews, and cryptid lore. These are story-style recollections inspired by real reports from Pennsylvania Bigfoot archives. I thought it was a deer until it locked eyes with me. A solo hiker, let's call her Mara, is hiking along an overgrown path when she pauses by the creek to rest. She scans the opposite bank expecting a deer or maybe a raccoon. but instead sees a massive form, dark brown fur, hunched but upright, limbs thicker than any deer's, and turning slowly to look directly at her. The creature steps into the light for a moment, and Mara swears she sees a large human-like feet before it lumbers back into the trees. Mara flees, but later returns with prints, footprints at least 14 inches long, with deep impressions that lead off towards boggy ground. Her camera never quite caught the creature, but the tracks remain. She called the BFRO. The story spread locally. The hiker later deleted the digital photo, claiming the image changed when zoomed, just a smear. Others said the prints vanished when it rained the next night. Knocks start after the storm. A group of storm survivors clearing debris after heavy rainfall in Central County. After clearing a cluster of fallen trees, they began hearing wood knocks. First distant, then much closer. One surveyor, Jim, paused near a stand of pines and said he heard something, like a tap, 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 tap. Loud, rhythmic, almost like slow Morse code. The knocks moved from the tree to tree, traveling uphill until abruptly stopped. Jim said something was watching from the ridge. When he turned, he briefly saw a shadow at least 8 feet tall moving between the trunks. But as soon as he raised his camera, it vanished. One of the survivors later claimed he found large hair tufts, dark and coarse, snagged on a pine branch. But by the time Bigfoot investigators arrived, the tufts were gone, allegedly removed by forest workers thinking they were just trash. The knocks, however, they kept repeating. 2 fishermen in a drift boat recall hearing a piercing howl from deep in the forest. Not quite like a coyote, not quite like a bear. One of them says it sounded almost human, but wet and gurgling, a deep guttural scream that faded into something like a sob. Moments later, they smelled a strong, foul odor, rotting meat mixed with wet fur and something metallic. They turned on their flashlights and saw no eyeshine, but something large sloshed through the reeds and vanished. When they exited the boat, they found large, wet footprints in the muddy bank, 16 inches in length, wide with deep heel impressions, and the smell lingered for hours. Later, they swore their car smelled off, like the strange forest odor even after they washed it. The prints slowly faded as the mud dried. One of them still insists it wasn't a bear. It walked upright. These kind of encounters, combining sight, sound, smell, footprints, and a deep instinctive feeling of being watched or followed, are typically of Bigfoot stories in Pennsylvania, especially in areas like the Allegheny, Central County, and forested creek valleys. Of course, no Bigfoot tales is complete without the skeptics. Pennsylvania Bigfoot lore is full of alternate explanation, hoaxes and misidentification, and sometimes outright pranks. The National Weather Service Bigfoot photo from Fayette County, March 2025, was quickly dismissed by officials as possibly a staged figure or prank, and locals noted that there are yard Sasquatch statues placed in forests just to troll hikers. Many skeptics point to black bears standing on hind legs, or fallen logs, or shadow illusions as explanations for fleeting Bigfoot sightings. Without a body, skeleton, or verified genetic material, very few cryptozoologists are wholly convinced. As one Pennsylvania Bigfoot investigator put it, "Show me a skeleton or carcass and then I'll be convinced." Some Bigfoot tracks or wood knocks have been traced back to deliberate hoaxes, people building Bigfoot pranks, slapping trees with tools, or leaving fake fur behind on branches to lure cryptid hobbyists. Still, even skeptics admit that Pennsylvania's terrain is perfect for misidentification, thick forests, echoing hollows, hidden ravines, and the kind of topography that can swallow sound and light, creating illusions that stick in your mind long after you left. But Bigfoot in Pennsylvania isn't just a modern cryptid. It hangs over local folklore like a long shadow. In Chestnut Ridge, Dairy Ridge area, there are long running tales of wildmen or wild hare giants roaming the hills. The legends of the Wildman often intersects with the Appalachian ghost stories. Hikers hear footsteps in the night or drums echoing in the canyons and assume something supernatural is at work. Some stories tell of white Bigfoot or pale Sasquatch figures seen in Beaver County, sometimes described almost ghost-like, white fur, glowing red eyes, or fading into mist. These tales blur lines between Bigfoot and spectral entities and sometimes gets folded into local ghost lore. Sam Sherry, a fisherman along with Loyalhanna Creek, claimed a Bigfoot encounter in the 1980s. Later in his life, he became a local Bigfoot advocate. His stories and the creek itself have become focal points to Squatch hunters. Pennsylvania hosts Bigfoot-themed events, the Forest County Bigfoot Festival in Marineville, the PA Bigfoot Camping Adventure, and camp-out tours that lean into both myth and investigation. These events underscore how Bigfoot has become woven into the identity of the PA wilds. The tension here is rich. Bigfoot is both a creature of horror stories and a local mascot, a ghost in the woods and a folk symbol, something folks are equally afraid of and excited to see. Nightly Haven thrives in that tension. It was a crisp March morning, sunlight just filtering through bare branches. Todd McPherson stepped into the Spring Creek Canyon north of Penn State Fish Hatchery, boots crunching in the hard frost leaves. He paused by the stream, lifting his binoculars, listening to the rush of the Spring Creek, and then tap. A sharp knock echoed uphill, clear and hollow, as if someone struck a dry log with a stick. Todd froze. He peered into the hillside, nothing but trees. He chalked it up to falling limb or maybe a hunter upstream. He walked on. 2 steps. Tap again. This time, the sound was closer, heavier. He turned slowly to look uphill. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Minutes passed. Then, crack. Crack, crack. The brush broke high on the slope. Something heavy moved, rushed away from him. Todd felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He clicked his phone's camera, half expecting to catch a glimpse, but the woods were silent again and empty. He walked out, heart pounding, replaying the sound in his head. Later, he would return to investigators and find nothing. No prints, no hair, nothing, except the memory of those knocks and the feeling that something was out there watching him. This wasn't a fleeting hunch. This was a warning. The forest remembers. So, what if Pennsylvania does hide a population of Bigfoot? What would that mean? Let's go full Nightly Haven speculative mode for this moment, weaving in theories and real cryptozoology speculations. So, the remnant population theory, some cryptids theorists suggest Bigfoot could be a relict population of Gigantopithecus, or I know I messed that up, or other massive hominid, or a parallel species that managed to survive unseen in isolated wilderness. Pennsylvania rugged terrain and low human density in certain pockets make it plausible for such a species to remain hidden. Now, Bigfoot might have become nocturnal or crepuscular in response to human presence, avoiding daylight, staying to ridges, creeks, and deep hollows. Forest knocks, branches break, and echoes could be territorial signaling, calls, warnings, or communications between individuals. Many witnesses describe wood knocks, howls, or branch slaps before sightings. Some reports of strong, unpleasant odors, wet fur, rotting meat, skunk-like musk suggest Bigfoot could have scent glands or hygiene habits very different from known mammals. So why don't we have any corpses or bones? Well, one of the biggest arguments against Sasquatch is the lack of bodies and physical remains. Some theories suggest that Bigfoot may bury its dead, or that carcasses deteriorate quickly in wet, acidic forest soil. Others suggest scavenging by animals or insects could remove remains before humans ever find them. Alternatively, Bigfoot might not die naturally in the forest, but retreat to caves, rivers, or other locations not typically frequented by people. Some Bigfoot storytellers hint that Sasquatch may use rudimentary tools, sticks, branches, or rocks to make noises, knocks on trees, or leave signs. This could explain the knock reports, Bigfoot testing territory, tapping hollow logs, or communicating with others. Others speculate Bigfoot might have learned to observe or even avoid humans, modifying its behavior to stay hidden, watching hikers, then ducking back into the forest. If Bigfoot is real, Pennsylvania forest regions, the Allegheny National Forest, Tionesta Creek Valley, Spring Creek Canyon, and the ridges overlooking game lands are prime territory. It would mean that the Squatch is not just a Pacific myth, but a creature adapted to the Appalachian ecosystem. It would also reframe the numerous wood knock and vocalization reports not as a fringe or hoax events, but as legitimate signs of communication, territory marking, or even warning calls. Finally, it would push us into reevaluate old stories of the Wildman. In Pennsylvania folklore, not as legend alone, but as possibly rooted in real encounters with unknown animals. So as we wrap this up, let's return to the hush of the forest, the sound of the wind through the bare branches, and those knocks. Tap, 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 tap. In the hush of Pennsylvania morning, sometimes all it takes is one knock to shift your entire world. A tap on a tree, a branch that snaps in midair, a shadow glimpsed between trunks, and suddenly you remember that the wild is never truly quiet, because the wild man is still out there, still watching, still knocking, still waiting. This has been Nightly Haven. And if you like stuff like this and stories of cryptoids or mysteries or true crime, subscribe, share, like, comment. I appreciate you guys, and you guys have a great night. Bye.